Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 178th episode of our House of Light run through, on YouTube, the expansion to Book of Hours. Now, we're going to be, I'll be wrapping up a little bit of the work that we set up earlier. I'm trying to remember. So I said I was going to do commandments for the preservation of all that exists, but I believe I was waiting on a heart memory for that. Yes, right here. So once we read the Perugian Diaries, I will be reading both commandments, for the preservation of all that exists and the Ivory Book. We should be able to do that with Sights and Sensations. And we are going to be down the elements of the soul as a result. So we'll lose those in the morning, but I mean, we were going to lose those to reading the books anyway. I am almost certainly going to be oversubscribed to sort of the heart and the winter, but I actually don't necessarily think that's too bad of a state to be in. What I did here was I just took a look at the skills that I need to level up and some approximations in terms of what I think I'm going to need for skills. So basically in terms of lessons, and this isn't a fully accurate list just because obviously you need one or the other. It doesn't have to be, I don't need Moon and Rose for something like Pearl and Tide. But basically in terms of potential lessons that I may need, I'm looking at 12 Moon, 10 Rose, 2 Scale, and 1 Nectar. So it's pretty clear here. You know, if I have something that will get me Moon, like up here, that's good. If I have something with Scale and Nectar, so Enchiridion Triangularis and Gospel of Zacchaeus would be good examples of those. You know, just getting those out of the way is probably the most valuable. And then the big revelation out of this is just how few aspects really help at this point. So I'm not that worried about the fact that I'm going to be reading commandments for the preservation of all that exists, for the simple reason that when I read it, I'll probably just use it to level up, some of my existing skills here. We'll get it out of the way, and then we just don't need to think about it again. I'm definitely at the point here where I would prefer, if possible, to just start knocking out a few of these, just in terms of getting them off my plate and hopefully committed to the Tree of Wisdoms. If I get to a point where there just isn't anything else to level up, then I'll just commit everything to the Tree of Wisdoms. We don't need to worry. I've so far held off on doing that just in case I need something during a Salon, or if I have the opportunity to break something up during Numa, I'd like to do that. I'd like to take the opportunity if I can, but I also don't see any value in holding these off, just there's no such thing as a perfect Tree of Wisdoms. So, if I'm at a point where I get more from committing them than just sort of waiting to see where I can take them up, then we'll transition to a more active assignment. All right, all of that said, let's get the heart, and then we'll start reading some books. I also don't think I've committed a memory yet, so everything but the fear is available. None of what I'm working... Well, okay. The scale, I guess, technically helps. We'll hang on to the secret threshold. It's maybe not the most important one I could go with, but it's unobjectionable. The other point I should make here, just looking at... So I've focused a lot on books so far, but when it comes to the other material to read, so Colors in the Liver gives us resurgences and emergences. Experiment Beyond Sight gives us edicts and violables. So at least here, this gives us Heart and Moon. But again, Heart doesn't quite have the same urgency that it used to. Lockworks and Clockworks doesn't give me anything that I need. And then I don't believe, maybe we've done one phonograph, but here we've got Hill and Hollow, Preliminal Meter, Stone Stories. These are actually a little bit more helpful for me because I'll have some nectar and such out of them. And again, this will get resolved at some point. It's just a question in terms of when I want to use some of this stuff. All right, the skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. Unexpected finds in the folds of earth and sky. Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Lopoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years, since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Lopoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good, certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear this dream of eyes. We've agreed to part almost amicably." Lopoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of the journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of Old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. So I'm going to read the Heart book at... Oh, sorry. Let's finish these off. Scraps from the Isle's Edge. Lots of eggs. Gleanings from the darkness. Okay, so I'm going to read at Nona's desk. It's usually just because it's the one that I sometimes find the most difficult to get the relevant element of the soul for. So drums and dances, and I guess again we don't need the yep, we don't need the mop and bucket. I can master this mystery, enough heart to match mystery heart. Now, the ivory book. So I can't do it at the pale desk because I need... Or can I actually? Well, I won't have the fet or the... I won't be able to use the fet or the tryst there, so that's not one I can start off with. But I could do it at Ava's desk because Sights and Sensations has winter. If I could, I would prefer to use... I'd prefer to use the fet over the tryst. The question is where I get my remaining winter from. Winter's definitely a tricky one to get a hold on. I don't think this will work with the winter part of the equation, though. I suppose the other option I have is to use the consider verb, but I'm a little wary of doing that. So I think what this is really going to come down to is how badly do I want to use the fet here? Yeah, I don't think it's actually worth tying up too much. So we'll use the tryst. Ivory book. Right, I can master this mystery, enough winter to match mystery winter. And I mean, if I want, I do have the option of something. I couldn't do the Geminiad because of the Fusine, but if I wanted, I could also try something like Horns and Ivories. So I'd be using that for the scale. And the scale would be, if I'm not mistaken, Hill and Hollow. Actually, my apologies. It would be either Hill and Hollow or Path and Pilgrim. So I guess the question would be... We don't have an infinite amount of time, so you know what? Maybe I'll just leave that be for now. But I'm happy enough with the collection that we're gonna have. I think especially, like, I'm not that worried about trying to level up some of these lower level ones. So Stitching and Binding's a pretty good candidate. I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. I'm also going to take a second here, so we've moved putrefactions and calcinations up. And it won't go any higher, so put you there. We also leveled up Magaphine Mysteries. Now that's not necessarily finished in terms of its journey. I should actually probably work out the level. I've got some notes here in terms of like moving them up, but I don't actually have a destination in terms of the notes, so I should probably take a look at that. All right, so when it comes to these remaining texts, we didn't even really get 30 seconds worth, so I should probably be working out the points that I'm putting in. So, okay, putrefactions and calcinations is where I want it to be. We were going to put points into Magaphine Mysteries. Magaphine Mysteries, I believe I wanted at 5. So I'm going to need 4... heart or moon. At which point, I guess the question becomes... what do I do with the remaining points? Okay. Sand Stories and Path and Pilgrim were Moon and Rose. Well, I could definitely do something with the scale. Okay, so Path and Pilgrim... So I did change my mind. I'm going to do something with Gospel of Zacchaeus or Serpents and Venoms. So Path and Pilgrim needs to be at... I don't know why I'm looking at my notes. It should be here. So that needs to go to level 6. Okay, not the easiest thing in the world, but we can handle it. And then the other task that I have for today is bringing in Mr. Kill. So let's get that at the start. Mr. Kill likes conversations about endings. His wife prefers to talk about beginnings. A shilling will buy his help for a day. Let's do it. Let's use the shaft for fixing and mending. There's not much work on offer in Brancrude, but I can find 6 worth of odd jobs. Now, I'm going to, at some point, want the Hive's Lament again. Now, I can't get that because I'm already using Drums and Dances. But maybe what I'll do here... Enchiridion Triangularis is a pretty high-level book. So, as a what if I could get away with this Okay. So could I do Tridesma Hyra? I can. So I'm going to use Tridesma Hyra because then I can use the Edict's Marshal to get the Wormwood Dream back. I feel a little nervous in terms of the amount of time that I have left, but the good news is I believe with that text, if we're getting Serpents and Venoms, it's Scale and Moon, so I can repurpose some of this towards Pearl and Tide. Okay, so first things first, let's get some of this heart that I want added to the list. So I shouldn't rely on Mr. Kill for memories, but I won't close myself off to the option either. And because heart, so the thing I want to think about for heart right now is that it's not, heart is not something that I'm going to use in any of these other ones. So if it's 4, we've got the Cheerful Ditty. Excuse me. Oh, I can't do the Fusine text. Okay, that's 2. Solace should be next. Storm, Solace, Cheerful Ditty. Why am I missing the last? It's Satisfaction. Okay, so that should be Megaphine Mysteries done. Scale and Rose is next, so I'm actually already on my way with the Rose. So from there, let's say... Well, we only have the 1, so... we could use... Confounding Parables. Alright, a little different from what I was planning, but I'm not unhappy with how that turned out. Let's also go to the Practic Garden dummy. I'll use metal here. Edict's Marshal. So I'll just use the old wound in this case. It's easy enough to get a replacement, and that's to replace the Wormwood Dream. And the Cloudy Day, I like this just because it'll help me on the moon side of things. Let's do it. Okay. So for starters, talk with Mr. Kill about... I'm going to do this in a slightly weird order, but we'll start by talking with him about health. I'm ready to lend my limbs, boosts heart, scale, and nectar. I'm pretty sure I'm going to use the Lignum Vitae Blanc and the Sacrament Malachite no matter what, but I figure it doesn't hurt to at least get some of the basics down with him. Work alongside each other. I can lend my assistants something to help, increasing their abilities. Still be able to use this tool. While we're waiting, I can also open one of the packages. Should have done that earlier, but... I'll take a quick audit of the skills that, or the memories that I generate. And that's just going to be to make sure that I don't get caught flat-footed when it comes to the various levels. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. Instruments of the Heart. Sister Isabel, then precentress of the Abbey Church of St. Brendan's, engages in dialogues with a heart-long of a kind called Dwendrazon that has taken partial possession of her body. The Dwendrazon, like all its kind, usually dwells in the mansis, but can enter the physical world by manifesting as music and take possession of a willing or semi-willing mortal who hears and loves that music, like Isabella. Isabella records her dreams of the High Mansis, where she is accorded the Dwendrazon status and titles. In return, the Dwendrazon enjoys what it calls Sejura, a welcome oblivion. Our mostly blessing is that we may never cease, except in Sejure. There is something more that Isabella refers to as the Sejura Magna, but she laments that her Dwendrazon will not tell her exactly what that might be. So that's for Magaphine Mysteries. What does not bark? Alexander Probst writes warily of Calyptra, a law, principle, or society which prevents the dissemination of dangerous knowledge. Calyptra, like the planet that occludes the star, or the Doylean dog that fails to bark, can be identified only by its absence. Even the name, I think, must be a mask. Calyptra is said to make exceptions specifically for the libraries of the Watchman's Tree. Does it make those exceptions so the Hours can make use of them? The Mirror of Melisande, the daybook and dream journal of Abbess Melisande, venerated as a saint and respected as an alchemist. Melisande speaks longingly of those we would call from behind the sky. Melisande claims that the sights and sensation arts that she describes can be used to invoke the dream of a star, when sufficient sky aspect is invoked to uplift an ascendant harmony. And A Journey to the Grove. Black Ellie, who much later became Damascene matriarch of the Sisterhood of the Knot, recounts her journey to the Grove of Green Immortals. In the Grove, Ellie meets with an entity identified as Three Faces, Nine Colors, who may have become her lover. Three Faces is the name of the Applebright, the nowhere hour of youth, healing, and mutation. It offers Ellie a form of eternal youth to take back west with her, which she rejects for certain reasons. She does promise, however, to renew their acquaintance in the season when the Applebright is the witch, not from sentiment, but rather grandly to ensure the continuity of the histories. Right, and it is written, Musgrave, fourth of the DeWolf line, writes tentatively about the Covenant of Brandkrug and the legacy of the sacred inks he calls Incasta Potentialia. As light passeth through a prism into many colors, so the great inks separateth into the lesser inks, and the lesser inks into inks minor. Musgrave coyly refuses to talk of the great inks, or else refuses to admit he doesn't know much about them. He insists that Ugall and Stargall, which can be mixed with sufficient nectar or sky aspect, are sufficient for most befitting purposes. Alright, so the confounding parable wasn't necessarily for Magaphine Mysteries. Excuse me. We are going to be working on Path and Pilgrim, so that's a Scale and Rose story. So let's focus on that for the next little bit. Hindsight should give me... So that's 4 of the 5 that I need. Okay, so that should cover me for the Path and Pilgrim. I might even want to consider the Hill and Hollow. But I'm just trying to think I don't actually have that much more that I can drag out of this. Maybe a savage hymn. And the rest I think I'm just going to have to be patient on. Right, this tool has boosted their aspects appropriately. So, our options. So we've done Element of the Soul. We have done Tool. We will have a beverage before too long. So maybe what I'll do here is I'll save the memory for last. Yeah, so we can actually get up to 12, and I believe it was 13 that we... No, hang on. It was 14 that we wanted, and I specifically wanted to go to the Menacing Phosphorescence rather than the Honeyed Forbidding, because I should be able to get more heart when... Okay, so our target is 14. That actually poses a problem because I can get nectar through the impulse, which I will actually do right now. But that's only going to get me 1. But I could probably just give up the pears for that, and we should be good. Unless I have something, some food item that gives me 2 nectar. The dark marrow. Okay. I'll do that then. Which of course means that technically the impulse is wasted now, but I'm not going to lose too much sleep over that. What it does do, though, is it saves me from having to generate the Hive's Lament. Let's hope it's equally possible to forget this again. So this one's a pretty simple one for me to restore. I just need some element of the soul. Probably... Oh no, I've got the Levitic tincture. Let it clutter up their shelves. Okay, let's go ahead with the Sacrament Malachite. Back in the Dawn period, the Sisterhood of the Triple Knot used this in the rites of the Ringyu, the hour which has also been called the Malachite. I can offer my assistants something to drink. The Ivory Book, a manual of the Ordo Lamea, an order of quasi-immortals who maintained a secret enclave at the source of the river Limia in the Roman province of Hispania Gallicaea. This manual was compiled by one Kurenai, who claims to have fled the tyranny of the Chrysanthemum throne to cross the world and join the Ordo. Members of the Ordo took an oath, the Ivory Chain, not to have commerce with the Hours. Followed literally, this would be almost impossible for an adept, so the manual contains numerous clarifications, exceptions, and processes of indulgence. Kurenai describes the Order's burial rites, which include spells to ensure, in theory, that the souls of dead long are not given to the Hours. The hour called the Ivory Dove, who memorializes and commemorates, is to be invoked in secret in these rites, for with that hour we have made an understanding. So there's the quenchings and quellings, and we got a regret from that. I think this was the... Was it Magaphine Mysteries? Sorry, I'm losing track now. Well, if it was, it wasn't helpful. Alright, I've got a full regret shelf. I'm actually also running out of space up here. Alright, so I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this, but it's close by. I'll just double check that I don't already have. So fear, gossip, foresight, patterns, hindsight, intuitions. Wait a minute. Wasn't there gossip already? Yes. I don't know why I feel the need to keep this empty, but... all right. Moving on. Commandments for the preservation of all that exists. Black Ellie, Damascene matriarch of the Sisterhood of the Knot, was imprisoned by the Emperor Didius Julianus. She reportedly instructed that these secret doctrines be recorded in writing to preserve against their loss. Regrettably, the story goes, Didius Julianus ordered that the work be entombed with her in an unmarked sepulchre. Ellie describes powerful protective incantations to be used in a variety of circumstances. It is essential that these protections be completed every 4th year to defend against the entry of the worms and against the avidity of the wave and the wound. In the current history, at least, there is no indication that these protections have been performed regularly for at least the last 1,000 years. Okay, there's satisfaction, which I think we also have used up. Stitching and binding. All right. I think I just made it harder on myself. And 1.9 seconds, so before we follow through... yeah, I'll wait. Something abandoned. Crack open the container. Delight in your discovery. Warmly colored yarns. A blushing nest of possibilities. All right. I don't even know where I'd put these. Don't think there's any room in here, but... well, I tried. Bridge it is. All right, let's level things up. So it's anyone's guess in terms of quenchings and like I don't really think there's a hard and fast rule for how I should be using stitching and bindings relative to quenchings and quellings. I guess one thing I can do here is I can say, all right, we've got, when I look at the heart stuff, okay, so stitching and binding is going to get one already. Yeah, that already brings us up to 4. Okay. Well, we know it's going to go to Megaphine Mysteries for sure. Yeah, so you know what? I'll do stitching and binding here. What am I thinking? And I guess the core is the best thing for me to apply. So satisfying to have come so far. Improve the skill to level 5. So this was an actual objective. One of the reasons why I'm trying to keep track of... one of the reasons why I'm trying to keep track of the specific skills that I'm leveling up, I want to make sure that the first action that I take needs to be actually fulfilling some of these like these long-term objectives I have in terms of the the Tree of Wisdom. So in the case of Magaphine Mysteries, it actually has a really specific role. If you look at, because I know this is going into preservation, in the case of preservation, we're actually already up to 5. So by putting this in position 5, I'm potentially unlocking more of the path. Now, unfortunately, Hill and Hollow is the next one blocking, so it's not quite as big of a breakthrough as all of that. But basically, so I wanted to focus on getting that heart stuff just so I can say, okay, that is now out of the way. I'm good to go. We got what we needed from the heart. And so the rest of this here is now, okay, is there anything that I can do with heart and winter? Well, Putrefactions and Calcinations is at level 8. Magaphine Mysteries is at level 5. So the remainder here is going to be going to the various entries. So in this case here, Stitching and Binding, I think, is the lowest out of all of these. In fact, I'll put that on my to-do list because we're basically at the end. So Stitching, Binding, +1. For Quenchings and Quellings, it's Heart and Winter. So one of these will be Inks of Containment. And then the question would be, when we get up to level 4, do I want to put that towards Weaving and Not Working? Quenching. I guess Quenchings and Quellings is the most sensible, so... So again, these are not top priorities. If I sort of run out of things to do, I'll take care of it. But right now, the focus is going to be on gaining what I can from Enchiridion Triangularis, and actually, I think it's just Enchiridion Triangularis at this point. I'm going to say that's a tomorrow me problem to deal with, actually, because I know I'm already reading some books to try and close the gap. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. We should have one more for the week, and we'll probably... I know I like doing lots of recaps, so I think we'll probably have a bit of a think in terms of where we're at in terms of my overall reading list, but I imagine before too long I'm going to want to try and make a move on some of this Pearl and Tide stuff. On the other hand, I can also see Hill and Hollow just because it is a blocker to the rest of Preservation. But whether or not I can do that in one day, we'll see. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.